Hey, Boston! Welcome to .NET Rocks!
Wow.
Wow, indeed. I love Cambridge. You guys rock. Cambridge! You rock! Boston, Cambridge, very close together.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I think we were staying in Boston, but we're here in Cambridge, and it was just a short cab ride over.
It's funny. We're near Boston. We're in Cambridge, and we're staying in Somerville.
Okay.
Somerville. That's how you say it, right?
All these old New England towns are too close together.
Yeah. This is the original horse cart road town.
Yes.
And some of these roads come together. You're like, who designed these roads? Yeah, some horse did. That's what happened. Well, we are at the Microsoft Nerd Center with Don Syme. And Keith Battocchi. And before we bring them on, we have a little business to do.
What's that, sir?
It's called Better Know Framework.
All right.
Roll the music.
All right, what you got?
I love that music.
It's the best music ever.
It's the best music ever. Do you guys like that music? Yeah.
Good music.
Oh, man.
What do you got?
All right. You know, I actually play instruments, too, and they don't like that. They just want to hear So if you go to tinyurl.com/linkregex, LINQ you'll find this blog post with yet another amazing C# link trick. Regex filter in a list.
Really?
Yep.
Link for regex? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, so here's how it starts. I really, really do adore C#, especially with link. Top it off with a very convenient regular expression mechanism, and one can do wonders in C# in one expression. You heard it right, one expression. Talk about language expressiveness. And he gives an example here that looks like a cartoon character swearing up and down. It's really kind of ridiculous.
Like most regex.
But it's a very cool trick, and that's just one nice little semi-functional thing that I found today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'll buy that.
tinyurl.com/linkregex.
All right.
Know it, learn it, love it.
Okay.
Who's talking to us, Richard?
Grabbed a comment off the show 803, which is the one we did with Alec Robson on polyglot programming.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to talk to Alex later in the road trip, too.
That's right.
He's on one of our stops. I can't remember which one. I think it's Louisville. All right. And this comment...
We're probably not going to remember much about Louisville. Just saying. That's Kentucky.
Yeah, it is Bourbon Town, isn't it?
That's the mothership.
We're going to be running into liquor stores every 10 blocks and loading up.
Just saying.
I'm going to go to jail.
Probably.
This is a comment. I'm just saying that because I have to take all those bottles back to Canada.
Shh, you shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, okay. Have you seen our tracking website? We're already going to jail.
Now the customs guy's going to listen to this show. And
that's going to happen. Nice. This comment is from Michael, who says, great show, guys. I totally agree with Alex that breaking out of a monoculture can be a great value for you and your team. I myself would consider to be living in a dev monoculture using mostly .NET and Microsoft tools for writing and running software, but even just playing around with different languages out of your comfort zone and learning about paradigms different to the ones that you're used to can spark so many ideas and new ways of thinking about problems and their solutions. The thought that popped into my head listening to the show is how do you do efficient ALM with a system consisting of a variety of different components and runtimes? In a pure .NET world with Visual Studio, TFS, and IIS, we have a great tool set which works great out of the box. If you start using Node and Erlang and the like, you will probably start using different IDEs, different testing tools, different deployment and monitoring tools, in addition to the ones that you already use. Managing all this while getting dependent on more vendors than just Microsoft and their release cycles is definitely a challenge. I would love to listen to a show about ALM in a really polyglot dev environment. What do you think?
Sounds impossible.
Yeah. But
anybody doing this? ALM and a polyglot? Yeah. Two people in the audience.
Isn't the answer Git? And
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, GitHub solves everything. Phil Hack's back there. He knows the answer to GitHub. And Michael says, P.S. I really hope that Alex is putting code out there that he is writing to use Erlang to make .NET applications more reliable using supervisors. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
That's a cool comment, Michael. Thank you so much for it. And so we will send a .NET Rocks mug off to you. And if you'd like a .NET Rocks mug, just write a comment on the website at .NETRocks.com.
And before we go any further, I need to tell you that Pluralsight offers developer training online. They have over 300 hardcore courses taught by industry experts, MVPs, people that appear on our show. They offer 8 to 10 new courses a month, and with a wide range of topics, including iOS, Android, web, ASP.NET, HTML, JavaScript, just about anything on the Microsoft stack, including Windows 8 and Windows Store apps. Subscriptions start at $29 a month. Pluralsight.com. And with that, let us introduce one more time Don Syme and Keith Battocchi. Don, yeah, I was just going to say, Don caught me at the food bar and said, I can't believe how many people turned out for this. And I said, well, you're kind of a big deal.
You're kind of the man. It's true.
You're kind of a big
I still
deal.
can't believe it. You guys put on a good lot of food, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, the food, that's actually Magenic who put on the
That's
food
right.
for us.
Yes.
We just asked nicely, and it worked out quite well. Can we call you the father of F Sharp? Is that fair?
I don't know how these things have a long tradition, right? F Sharp has a lot of stuff behind it.
Sure.
A lot of OCaml behind it, a lot of other Haskell, Python influences, C# influences.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's all interlinked here.
Now,
and
now that it's actually in the box in Visual Studio, you're a research guy, right? Aren't you done with it? Isn't it gone from you? It's over in Redmond now.
We didn't work like that with the F Sharp team. I think it's one of the something I'm really proud of how Microsoft Research and Microsoft operated. We didn't it sort of we did a kind of partnership between Microsoft Research and the developer division right through. I'm a big believer that when you do research, if you're going to make it real, you have to go with your research until it's not only in reality, but until it's like, until you have that feeling that it's not just safe. It's not about safety. It's about that's the right time that you've done your job. Okay. And you stick with things until you've done your job and you don't walk away from them. We did that with generics, as everybody knows, in C#. We took it all the way through. I've been writing a bit about the history of that project out on my blog. Some people have been here, been really enjoyable today to follow, to talk to some of the mono guys here and to hear about them reading the history of that project and how important history is in some of this stuff that we do.
So you were here today for Monkey Space. And
that's right. I'm actually in Boston for a whole lot of reasons. One of the amazing things about the Nerd Center where we are today, we've got Microsoft Research in my home. We've got just nearby. We've got Xamarin, and they're holding the Monkey Space conference here today. Yeah. And we've got some amazing Microsoft product teams here, one of which is Cloud Numerics, which I've been visiting here. They're in SQL Lab status at the moment. It's an incredible set of Azure functionality, and I've been working with them. And it's all here in one building, and I get to visit everybody in like 2 days. And you guys turn up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ice cream. Ice cream. Yeah.
I remember way back when we were planning the conference, which was planning the tour, which was months ago, I pinged you to see if you would participate, and you said, you happen to be coming into Boston on the same day as Monkey Space, and I've submitted my session there. Maybe we could work something out. And then I got a hold of, it was Dale Reagan.
Right.
And there was a bit of scrambling going on, and it all worked out. Here we all are.
Yeah, that's
and tomorrow
right.
we're going on a duck tour. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, of course. We're going to see a Red Sox game.
Nice.
No.
So now you're presenting here. We've got a chance to have a conversation. But I think I'm going to ask Keith a couple of questions because he's sitting there.
Absolutely.
What is it you do with this band?
Sure. So I've had the great experience of being able to do a lot of different things, but a lot of what we've been working on is taking the F# 3 features, which are now released into the wild with Visual Studio 2012, and sort of pushing them to their limits and seeing where can we use those features and where does it make sense to so I guess let me back up a little bit. So for those people who aren't familiar with what's in F# 3, one of the biggest features is something called type providers. And the idea is really that out in the world, there are a lot of huge data sources that you might want to program against that have schemas in one form or another. And it would be really nice to be able to program against those things in a sort of strongly typed way, right in your language. And so what type providers do is really bring those external data sources into the language that you're familiar with and sort of embed them in F# in this case. And so a lot of what we've been working on is thinking of sort of, where can we push that technology? Where does it make sense? What are sort of some of the common patterns that we see across different data sources? A lot of things like that.
Do these types become consumable by CLR other languages, or they just exist inside?
Oh, no. We're kind of keeping this F# only. It's a little private feature. Yeah. If you want this one, you got to come to F#. Yeah.
He said with an evil grin
that's
on
right.
his face.
Yeah. It's time to make you guys click on that new F# project. Kind of take the big step. Dare to pollute your solution with an F# project and kind of see what it does for you. Yeah.
So. It's interesting because we've been talking to F# people from the very beginning of its existence, and originally we sort of got the idea that using F# was really the domain of science and big data and data intensive, walking a lot of data, that kind of thing. And the question would always come up: would I use F# for line of business applications? And back then the answer seemed to be no, you probably wouldn't. And the more people we talk to now, that's becoming more of a commonplace thing for people to build your standard line of business application with F# UI and all. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, no, I think we stick to the party line from the Microsoft perspective, which is F# has a role as a code behind language.
Okay.
And I think it's important to be clear about that. We're happy for the F# community to take a different message, right?
Sure.
Actually, F# has a sweet spot as far as Microsoft is concerned, but in particular, some F# community projects are lighting it up in some really interesting ways, which Microsoft aren't directly vested in, but the F# community is making things that are just amazing. And one I'd really call out is WebSharper. The HTML5 toolkit for F#, and that's just great because you get homogeneous programming between server side and client side in a .NET language. And I mean, we've got variations of that in Script Sharp. We've got variations in some other C# to HTML5 things, but there's something about the affinity between sort of JavaScript is very functional first, right? Sure. And F# is a functional first language.
And I'm thinking Node.js in that realm that you might be encroaching on there.
Yeah. There's definitely Node is all about getting homogeneous between client and server, and there's huge value in that. And personally, everybody here would know I'm absolutely over obsessive about types. That my role in the .NET ecosystem has been making typed programming really fly in lots of interesting ways. And I think that applies to client server programming. I think we've seen a lot of that with TypeScript coming out now as well. There's that trend in that direction that types are back in fashion on the client side again. And so you asked a question like what's
the sort of the relationship there?
Were you asking what's F# for? What's its role?
Right.
So Microsoft has a view of its role as a sort of analytical programming code behind language. It's a great role for the language. But if you look more broadly in the F# community, we've got a lot of other interesting things going on as well.
Anywhere that sort of functional mindsets like the JavaScript mindsets come in, it seems like F# could step in there too.
Yeah, I mean the functional mindset is just everywhere these days. It's not even optional. I mean, one of the really interesting things to me about the TypeScript launch, when you look at it, was I don't think they mentioned that it's a functional programming language, right? Because it is through and through. It's everywhere. It's lambdas and function types, and it's kind of like some sort of ML, right? So ML in a functional programming tradition with a bit of structural typing. And that's great because it's almost like functional programming mixed object-oriented functional programming has won so convincingly that you don't even have to talk about.
Now you just call it programming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just call it modern programming or something like that. Yeah. So
and it's interesting that it's not so modern. I mean, functional has been around for years and years and years.
Well, that's certainly true. Typed functional programming has been around like since like the 70s, and untyped functional programming from well before that.
But with this mix of object-oriented and functional programming, that seems to be what we're calling modern programming.
Yeah, the integration. I mean, as I say, from a programming languages perspective, it can look something like we've seen back in the 70s, or the proposals for structural typing in the 80s. But I think the comparison point is really with the 1990s, where we had like this unbelievable object-oriented orthodoxy going through the system. Yeah. Absolutely everything had to be like inheritance and classes, and you couldn't. I'm really glad to see those days are long behind us. And
we generally figured out that inheritance was evil, and we moved on.
Yeah, at some point, finally. Yeah, there was a bad 10 years there and I still see. I think every one of us in the order has seen, the Java projects or that suffer from just unbelievable mess of object thinking and the clarity. I said I'd call out Demis Bellio, but not only because of the project, which we'll talk about in a bit, but he was showing me some of his code today in C#. And it's unrecognizable from C# 1.0.
Yeah.
Right.
It is just beautifully crystal clear, mixed functional, object-oriented, applicative programming. And, I'm thrilled that all these languages have taken the industry forward, in this way. Yeah.
Now, Keith, I want to jump back to this discussion about the unique type structures that you're working on. Is this actually something we're talking about in the context of F# 4?
No. So what I've been talking about is stuff that we sort of were working on prototypes as F# 3 was in development, and now F# 3 is out, and the stuff that we've been working on all works on top of F# 3.
Okay.
So if you have Visual Studio 2012, we're developing on top of that. And actually, if I can make a quick plug, one of the other things we worked on, there's a website called tryfsharp.org where basically you can try out F# in the browser if you have a Silverlight plugin. We're working on a preview site. The next version of that site will have F# 3 features in it, including type providers. And so if you go to preview.tryfsharp.org, you can try that stuff out right now in your browser.
Hey, Richard.
Yes, sir.
You know what time it is?
Must be that happy time again.
Yeah, it's time to give away a Telerik DevCraft Complete Collection to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club.
Awesome.
Today's winner is Daryl Skiard. Let's give Daryl a round of applause.
No golf clap for you.
From Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Just to the north of here.
They listen to .NET Rocks in Halifax.
Apparently they do.
While they're out on their fishing boats.
Nice.
And he also says, P.S. loving the album. That's some real honest, soulful blues.
Yeah, no, you got some good music there, my friend.
Well, anyway, if you don't know what we're talking about, go to the .NETRocks.com website, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, sign up for the fan club, because every show we give away something, and every December we're giving away $5,000 worth of technology handpicked by Richard and myself.
And I guess we're going to make the big ask here. So, Don, if you had $5,000 to spend on gadgets, what would you buy?
I'm not a gadget guy.
No?
That's a really, really hard question. I just don't.
You buy Hadoop cycles.
Big block of Azure time?
Oh, man. That's just like a really funny question to be asked.
How about a 64-core machine for the garage?
Yeah, I've been saving a bit of money, and I've probably actually.
Now here's a guy who wants the 64-core machine. Yeah. Everybody else is like, what, are you crazy?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Keith, what would you do?
I fall right along with you.
Yeah, we're research guys. Give us some pen and paper.
That's a lot of pens, man.
Yeah.
That's a lot of slide rules, too.
Yep.
And we have touched on this before, but can we give a rundown of your favorite F# 3 features, Don?
Yeah, we absolutely. I found So I talked about the mixed object-oriented functional programming sort of orthodoxy that's kind of taken over the industry, right? And that's That's all happy. But what's kind of next for programming languages is sort of what's been on my mind for the last 3 years when we look beyond that. And one of the unbelievable trends in this industry is what we'd call the data deluge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to forget when you're focusing on client side kind of app programming,
Right.
But the explosion of data services on the open web, the explosion in size of data services, the things like the Google Knowledge Graph that you can, for example.
Microsoft had the Dallas project.
The Dallas project in the Azure Data Marketplace now is a great example of how we're seeing sort of a professionalization of data provision on the web. And what we're seeing is programs have to interact with these information sources, and these information sources no longer scale to the traditional the traditional techniques that we use to interact with these data sources no longer scale. My favorite example is Freebase, okay, which is a web ontology. It's got like 20 million different entities in it. Maybe it might have like 3 million films. It might have like 300,000, 3 million books, 300,000 films. And you want to work with this data as part of your application. I mean, a typical thing is you might want to recommend a service to kind of or autocomplete service that as you start typing the name of a film, you get information coming back. The question is, Freebase is too big to code generate an API for Freebase. Okay. So how do we integrate that information into our programming languages, right? We need ways of interacting between the languages and the external world that scale to those kind of information services. So with that as a starting point, you then start to question some really fundamental assumptions in the history of programming languages, right? And one of the most fundamental assumptions about programming languages is that they form a closed world. Okay, you start with the program, and it's nothing but the code. We love that view. It's almost like part of the Western philosophical tradition of how we write out logics, how we write out mathematics. It's like this closed world system. Okay. And there's nothing, you start with nothing and you build up a fantasy universe. And that's, as programmers, that's almost what we do. We construct these fantasy universes.
That only exist in our head, really.
Yeah, that's right. And, but what if the programming language has a different role, which is to interface between you and the digital reality around you? And once upon a time, that digital reality was small. And now we have a digital reality which is so unbelievably, awesomely big in size that you can poke away in a tiny little part of it. Like you don't poke away on Freebase. It's one URL out of 6 billion or whatever on the web.
One query.
Yeah. And you can spend, a long time in that part of the digital reality. What about the rest of it? How are we going to bring all of that into our programming language experience? Okay.
Right. What happens when you have to touch all of that data and walk all of it?
Yeah. And so suddenly you think, okay, this programming language system which we have is not about just its mathematics internally. It's about interfacing to digital reality everywhere, everything. Like, you got asked in a cafe, like, what are you working on? I said, I've been writing a paper. So what's the paper about? Everything. Yeah. Right. It's like you, me, like from the digital,
and they
like
say, hey,
everything.
Do you have any more of those mushrooms?
Yeah, that's right. So you got crazy. And so that's been the enormous fun of working on this F# 3.0 feature, because all we've done is take a programming language. We take apart that little bit of the compiler, which is how the compiler talks to the rest of the world, the import logic, the symbol import logic, right? And you say, actually, let's make that a parameter. Okay. Let's make it you can plug in a function, right, into the symbol import logic, which is allowed to go and like snuffle around in reality and draw out all the metadata that's out there and provide it into your programming language experience. Yeah. And from this starting point, the applications are just unbelievable and endless. Okay.
Now, as soon as you start talking about communicating with those things, I immediately think web services. That's what I've been taught and what's worked for me.
Yep.
What's wrong with that? Like, what are we thinking differently?
Yeah, okay. So one of the big differences in thinking is instead of talking about the protocols that are in the middle or what's on the what are the standards on the server side, we're focusing on the programming language side in a way that not only works with web services as one example of things you can mediate with, but works for many other different things as well. Okay, we're opening up the programming language to talk to all sorts of scalable external information sources. Okay. So when it's not about a web service is about designing the protocol and committing to, often sometimes a lowest common denominator protocol but this is different. This is about saying actually the programming language is going to be an open architecture to many different scalable services.
So, and to expand on that, though, I mean, one of the built-in type providers with F# 3 is an OData type provider. So, obviously connecting to web services is hugely important, and that's something that, it's very easy to take those, strongly typed web services and reflect them into the language in a way that makes sense. And I mean, going back to, I would say from my point of view, the other nice thing about F# 3 is one of the things it really lets you do is kind of get quick feedback, sort of tighten the feedback loop, close the loop. So one thing I love about F# is type some code into a script or into an F# file. You want to test out how it's working. Highlight it, hit Alt-Enter to send it to F# Interactive, and right away you can see the results. You don't have the whole sort of compile and then debug cycle. And one thing that's great about type providers is they fit really well into that sort of a mold. So rather than having to say, okay, I know I want to go access the Netflix API and they have an OData web service, and so I'm going to code generate some C# classes that access that web service. Instead, you can say, here's the URL, stick that in my F# program, and then on the very next line, you're accessing movies and, actors and, whatever the objects are that Netflix exposes. Right. And so, again, it's all about that kind of really quick feedback. So where,
that's right.
There's no proxy building involved.
Well, if there is, it's behind the scenes, and you remain entirely code focused, right? There's not even any right click add service reference or anything. It's just it's just all just writing I want to talk to this service, I want to talk to this service, I want to mash this up with this. I'm getting these strongly typed data from all these different places, and I get my result, and I republish the data to some place.
When I think about this, I'm thinking about long running algorithms and things that are happening to traverse lots and lots of data. What are some of the more interesting applications that you can cite?
Well, the applications. So applications of the mechanism. So one of my favorite ones is the F# R provider, right? So it's actually so we've got with F# we like to do these judo throws, okay? So we, functional programming is faced with this whole world of .NET, right? Right. Or what do we do, okay? Objects, do we build our own frameworks, okay? Or do we, we do the judo throw and we say, actually, we'll embrace that and we'll bring functional programming in with .NET, and lots of good things follow from that. So we've got that same sort of thing with statistical programming. There's this amazing environment called R, which is used by many even a majority of statisticians.
The letter R?
Yeah, the letter R, yeah. And great environment. It's got 2,000 packages contributed by many different people to do a very advanced statistical analysis. So F# is kind of in that zone in it's kind of a math-oriented language. People who like R probably like F# or, that sort of thing. Sure. Yeah. But do we just compete with that environment? No. With the type provider mechanism, we're going to have a type provider which makes all of those R packages automatically available in F#. So you simply you install the R provider, you install R on your machine, and you go R and you hit dot. And every single R package that you've got installed on your machine suddenly lights up in F#. Yeah. Okay.
In IntelliSense. In the tooling.
In IntelliSense. So you actually probably get, in some ways, 2 tooling that's better in F# to access that R functionality,
I was
then
thinking
perhaps,
exactly
I'm
that.
not sure.
This is the same thing you were saying along the Netflix line. It's like, what if suddenly the web service is just extending your telesense?
Yeah.
That you just see it and treat it as just another set of services.
So you're typing the world, basically.
That's the aim. Yep. That's right.
also
I sometimes joke that our next project for Microsoft Research will be everything.dll.
Everything that
You do #R on that, and that's what you get.
Well, you know, and the thing I thought about R because this is the first time I've heard of it, but you know that'd be difficult to Google.
R.
Yeah.
R.
You know, F# not so easy either.
Yeah,
we can't
actually-
throw stones.
Yeah, it's got something. But I appreciate the idea that if you've got a great stats guy who's used to working in R, rather than have him change his skills at all, you just plug him into your project.
Yeah. That's right. And so what type providers becomes is just a very general interoperability mechanism.
Absolutely.
And when you see it in that light, there's actually real continuity here because in, F# and Scala as well as another language, which is all about interoperability. And I think that actually shows us that, programming is becoming more and more heterogeneous.
Absolutely.
Right. And, it's so nice as academics to try and work on homogeneous systems where everything's in the same language. And it's nice we were talking about this before with ALM kind of systems, right? That it's nice if everything's homogeneous, but we have to embrace a heterogeneous world and we have to have mechanisms right down in our languages. I think the type provider mechanism shows that if we put something right down in the language and in the compiler and in this basic tool we use to help us control the complexity of the world,
Right.
then good things can follow.
Yeah, heterogeneousness stops being an obstacle. It's just it's a natural way to work and it doesn't really make any difference.
I think the ALM comment that you started with actually shows there are many obstacles in heterogeneity, but the type providers is about saying that, well, at least with regard to typing, that doesn't need, you don't have to switch over to a dynamic programming language, for instance. You don't have to throw all those types out just because you're talking to a system that's different to you. You can actually put in the mediators to make the two systems that look incredibly different actually talk the same language.
And the presumption is always we would have to do that dynamically. It's almost like the surgence of dynamic language is sort of pressed against the type folks to say, we need to do this better. And it feels to me like type property is really a way to go on this.
Yeah, I think. There are cases where the world is like the schema is changing. During program execution, for example, that you have to. Whenever you apply typing, you're baking in certain assumptions about things not changing. Okay, and so you have to be aware of that and be aware that you have to use dynamic language techniques when change happens, right? And when you can assume that change you've got stability, you've got some ALM process for compiling, continuous build integration process, which is, checking your code each night to see if the schema's changed, for example. Then, you can apply typing to interrupt between external systems.
And I think of some of the big interop problems we've had in the last 10 years. The Java internet. The Java.NET interoperability story has been a nightmare.
Yeah. If I could wave a magic wand, that would all go away, and you'd just all be running the same
I guess
system.
That's what I'm asking.
Another magic wand would be, have some sort of really standard interop mechanisms between these between various virtual machine environments. So we all know that would do the world huge amount of good to have that. We're not there. That said, there's no reason why you can't write a Java a jar file, a class file kind of provider for F#. The interop will have to be at the level of transacting strings and integers, and if you do objects, you're going to have to pin them and things like that. Yeah. But the mechanism is there to experiment with, seamless interoperability between a .NET language and the JVM ecosystem in a strongly typed way. And there are other ways of doing that. You can run the virtual machine translators,
like IKVM.
IKVM, isn't it? Yeah, we've is the person who does IKVM here?
He's over
there, JV. Awesome.
You mentioned pinning just a minute ago, and that might have gone over a lot of people's heads, but you're talking about basically telling an object that it can't move in memory. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you're going to get two virtual machines talking to each other, they're going to have to
share.
Well, they're going to have to, in some way or another, kind of transact object handles between the two.
That gets
most of the kind of interoperability that we've been looking at, like interoperating with services, you don't have to actually send references to your objects to the other services.
You're marshalling to them.
Yeah, it's all marshal in, marshal out.
For better or worse.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in battles I've certainly had, if we go back a few years when we started being able to treat these remote groups of data as if they were local, it all worked the same, is now you started constructing joins or parses that related two or three of them together, and stuff just took a long time, and often it was very challenging to see why.
Yeah, I mean, this absolutely remains a challenge. The mechanisms we have in F# 3.0 don't directly address that. You can sometimes do some of it through typing. Like, we all know that when you see an iQueryable, it's probably a remote thing, right? And you've got but that doesn't help with joining across those structures. I don't think anyone has got a grip on that either at the server side to allow us to kind of, obviously you're going to need help on those. If you're going to do joins across things, they've got to be servers that understand certain protocols.
Sure. I mean, how much you want.
But even on the language side, I don't think we've got a grip for that sort of the resource, tracking resource usage in languages, because it's tricky to do, because the more you do that in the language, the more that gets in the way of what the programmer's thinking. And I like to differentiate between data scripting as an activity where it's time to insight that counts. And I guess it would be like data access engineering, where maybe you're writing an app and you desperately need to minimize the number of transactions you're doing with the server or something. And those are two surprisingly different programming problems, and you tend to change your data access mechanisms according to whether, you engineer them according to whether you're supporting data scripting or app engineering. Yeah.
You mentioned iQueryable. What is the relationship between LINQ and F#?
Yeah, so part of what we've done in F# 3.0 is to add LINQ queries into F#. We've not only added LINQ queries as they are in C#, but we've actually made them, like, the syntax is like super extensible. So all these things that you put outside the LINQ query in C#, like your dot distinct and your dot first and so on, you can put those in the query syntax in F#, and you can actually create new query syntaxes as well for different kinds of queries, like queries that don't have joins, for example, or have new operations in them. You've been working on that a bit. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Sure. So, like Don said, I think the F# approach is really nice. So one of the problems in C# is, as he said, sometimes it's hard to know whether you should be using the fluent syntax or, adding the method calls at the end, and you have to switch back and forth. So for iQueryable, that's all built in, but there is the ability to build what we call query builders for other data sources as well. So like Sharepoint has a concept of not only, selecting things out or sorting on them, but actually expanding certain entities when you're doing a query. So you could build a Sharepoint query builder that has an expand operator. And so, you say for each, entity in my table, expand the title property or something like that. And so you can build your own query builder that's going to have sort of a much more natural language for accessing that type of data source.
Yeah. Wow.
So another example of that is when we're talking about doing kind of Hadoop programming and Hadoop query programming, then you get these query operators which because there's multiple machines involved in running your Hadoop tasks, and you have different kind of aggregation operations, then you get different natural query operators dropping out in query syntax. And another great one is RX as well. That has a reactive extensions. And when you write queries in that kind of system, you're writing a very different extended kind of query. And so we want a query syntax which expands to all these different cases.
Yeah, I mean, Rx is a totally different thing. It's here's an expression which you could call a query that's going to raise events when things fall into its trap, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. And so the notion of joining, for instance, becomes different. Instead of joining on a key, on equality between two keys, you can say, I want to join with everything that's sort of nearby this in time.
Right.
Okay. And that's the kind of thing that we want to be able to express in the F-sharp query syntax.
That's pretty broad syntax.
So, yeah.
Puts link to shame.
Yeah. So adding link has been a big thing, but I kind of actually think of F-sharp 3.0 as sort of being Link 2.0. Okay, Eric's going to kill me for saying that. Right?
I was going to bring that up. Actually.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to say that because he's got, I'm sure he's got a.
He's got plans.
He's got trademark on the Link brand name.
He doesn't talk to us anymore.
Yeah. So Eric. Link 2.0, because it's Link address the remote query side of things and type data access for relatively small schemas, and we've extended that out to be sort of type data access for large, very
for
large
everything.
schemas. Yeah,
.dll.
Yeah, everything.dll.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my trademark.
It seems like this is the magic version 3 that, everything the Microsoft puts out. Version 3 is like the version.
Well, the next version's got to be 3.1. Well, okay. 3.1, yeah.
It's like, we got to mention, you're not done yet. I'm still fascinated with this interaction of what part you work on for F-sharp versus what's get done by DevDiv.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, to be honest, with next steps for like F-sharp 4.0, I'm actually not sure because, what we're hearing from F-sharp users is they want better tooling.
Right.
Okay. And, the tooling we've got is okay. We put a lot of investment in IntelliSense this time around to get that a lot more accurate and a lot more performant. And I actually think a good product cycle where we really concentrate on tooling is pretty much a good thing. But we're in the early days of planning. The other really important thing for F-sharp is its role, especially on the Azure platform.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and that, everything we've been talking about has such a natural realization for big data programming on Azure. One of the type providers we've been putting together is for doing Hadoop programming with F-sharp. So you can just do strongly typed programming through to your, through to your Hive and HDFS tables on Hadoop. And, when we talk to practicing big data practitioners, say from, we've got a guy on the F-sharp research team who used to work at eBay Research. Man, that world of big data, it's like it looks so nice when all you're doing is word count on the works of Shakespeare or something.
Right.
But when you get practicing big data teams, they get thousands of tables with thousands of properties.
Right.
And if you haven't got strong typing to be checking,
to actually match stuff well,
then you're just in hell of meta, a weekly type meta.
Few hours.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty confident that the F-sharp feature set, F-sharp 3.0 feature set, we don't necessarily have to extend the language, right? Because we've got this huge interoperability extension point called type providers, which we know we can exploit in a range of different ways. So maybe F-sharp 4.0 is not about putting lots of magic into the language, but it's about using the features we have to serve, from the Microsoft product perspective, to play the platform role that the language has to play.
Well, this has been .NET Rocks, and thank you very much. I'd like you to give another big round of applause to Don Syme and Keith Battocchi. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks! Yeah! Oh, come on, you can do better than that! Yeah. Thank you.